Good evening and welcome to the July 20th regular Board of Education meeting. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Pickle-Antonio?
Here.
Mrs. Mooring?
Here.
Mrs. Coates?
Here.
Mrs. Horn?
Here.
Mr. Manley?
Here.
And if you'll all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve minutes from the June 1st Board Workshop meeting, the June 13th Finance and Facility Committee meeting, the June 15th regular board meeting, the June 20th special board meeting, and the June 29th Board Workshop meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Mr. Manley. Any discussion? It looks like we met way too many times in the month of June for being summer. I just realized that. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Pickle-Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. So we are on the really best part of the agenda, which is the recognition section. I shouldn't say best, the most fun part of the agenda, which is the recognition section. I am going to call up our high school athletic director, Ms. Catherine Harris. There is a microphone over there that I am instructed to tell you not to move, but it should be all set and ready to go. And I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for having me. So excited to be here and just an honor to recognize our state champions from this past spring. So first, I'm going to start with Brandon Carpico. Come on up here, Brandon. I do want to just give a quick overview of some of his accolades during his tennis career at Gahanna Lincoln. As a sophomore in 21, he won the state championship. In 22, he was a state championship runner-up, and then his senior year, 2023, he was state champion again. So that right there speaks for itself. But he had a perfect season, 34-0 as a senior. He did not even lose a set, ladies and gentlemen. He now holds a school record, 103 wins with 4 losses, and those losses were to all first all-team state players. As you know, he's going to be playing at The Ohio State University, their elite tennis program. They've been ranked in top 5 in the nation probably for over the past 15 years or so. So super excited. I know Brandon didn't get to play at the new tennis courts at Blacklick Athletic Complex, but just know your accolades will be hanging for all to see. So congratulations, Brandon. It's been an honor and a pleasure to watch you compete over the years. Want to say anything? Good. Next, super excited to welcome our girls track and field head coach, Roger Whitaker, to the stand and kind of explain what's been going on. They've been making a lot of noise, adding, I think, the 4th state championship in school history, 4th, back-to-back in 22 and 23. And I'm going to have Coach Whit come up, and we do have some members from the state team.
I'm not as tall. Thank you, Kat. Really excited to be here. Actually, a lot of people were like, "Oh, I don't want to go to." I love coming to these meetings because it means we've done something special, and we continue to do that. And I continue to be amazed by these young ladies that do all the work. I'm simply there, kind of guiding, but they truly do all the work, along with my assistant, Jerica Manley, over there. And if they could, I'd like them to all come up, please. So Jerica, come on up. Jerica has been my assistant, I don't know how many years, but it's been a while. But I have assistants that actually ran for me. And so Jerica was a state class sprinter. Maisha Parker couldn't be here tonight. She's a state class sprinter that ran for me also. So it's great when they come back and want to be a part of things. It's not that I have to go and beg them to do it. They come and say, can I be a part of it? Because they know exactly what's going on. So I really appreciate that. And I guess I'll mention Kat too, right, Kat? Kat actually ran for me also. I know that's crazy, but yes, she did. She was a captain for me. And so she was an outstanding leader. And I know you guys see that all the time from what she does at the high school. But she does great things all the time. So I always appreciate her. I'd like to call up Deja Decree. She's a senior. She's about to attend Youngstown State. And also Aaliyah Bennett. She is on the other end of the spectrum. She's just going to be a sophomore. So come on up, Aaliyah. So I just wanted to get these girls recognized, starting with Deja. Just incredible. She is a school record holder in the long jump. She broke Amber Stokes. I don't know if you remember her. The dad played for Ohio State. She had a record back in, I don't know when, but
2008.
Okay.
It's not that far.
Okay, 2008. When did you graduate?
07.
Okay, so she graduated in 07, so she knows, but that's an incredible feat. And Deja was actually, she came up on her first jump and had a good jump. At second jump, she broke that record of 18 feet, 11 inches, which is just incredible. And the thing about Deja, and she'll tell you, oh, I was just so close to 19, just so close to 19. And I think that's the reoccurring theme for all of our girls. We kind of, coaching wise, we really try to let them know that we're trying to get them to do everything they can to get the best out of what they can do. So Youngstown State's getting a great athlete. Not only that, she was academic All-Ohio, which means that you have to get a 3.5 plus grade GPA and be in the state meet and score in the state meet. And she did. She was third. She really helped us win that championship, which was really exciting. So just wanted to have you appreciate Deja Decree. And then, again, at the other end is Aaliyah Bennett. Aaliyah was a freshman, and when you're a freshman and you can run for us, it's saying something. You really have ability, and there was a lot of pressure on this girl, a lot of pressure. But if you went to the state meet or saw the end of the year, you saw her. She was tearing that track up. She was the one with the headband on, and she brought us back a couple of times. So she really absorbed everything that these seniors gave to her, took it, ran with it, so to speak, and thankfully we got her for 3 more years. So that is amazing. Her times are not where they're going to be, and they're amazing right now, but she knows I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better. So give it up for Leah Bennett. So again, thank you guys for inviting us. I appreciate that. The longer I coach, the more I appreciate the little things. And one thing that I think we're going to start putting in we have a trophy case, and it's just getting really full of trophies. But I'm going to start putting it because I want people to see the faces behind the trophies. And so this is our 2022 team from last year, which is a nice little portrait. I know we have the ones up in the gym, and we got another one coming. And then this is beautiful because it was our last year, last June at night. And if you came to that meet, oh my goodness, how exciting that was, because going into the next to the last event, we had to have one team not do so great, and they didn't. And then going into the 4x4, we just had to beat Mason. That was the biggest thing. And I kept saying, we got to beat Mason, we got to beat Mason. And the girls knew I was excited. And Cam Bentley, who can't be here right now, there's a lot of girls who are out of town. I think she's on a cruise, which, okay, I got it. But anyway, I said, we have to beat Mason. And she said, Coach Witt, what are you talking about? And I said, we have to beat Mason. We beat Mason, we win the state championship. And she said, we're winning this race. I don't know what you're talking about beating Mason. You didn't teach us to do that. And I said, okay, sorry. And they walked off, and, somebody turned around, and I kind of mouthed, beat Mason. So it turned out to be a great ending, beautiful ending. And so next year, we'll see how it goes. We got pieces coming back. So looks pretty good. We'll have to see at the end of the year, how things turn out. As long as we're healthy, I think we'll be somewhere hovering around that top. So, but thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks.
I know you guys all have a lot going on, so you are more than welcome to go whenever you need to. Thank you for letting us honor your accomplishments. We really thank you. We're very proud of all of you. Okay, we are on the board reports part of the agenda, and we are going to begin with a report from Finance and Facility Committee, Mrs. Mooring.
Hello, everyone. And, okay, I'll bring it closer. Is that better? Okay. We had 3 items on our agenda. That sounds brief, but there was a lot of information. Phase 2 construction project update was our first subject, and we got a snapshot and an update on where all of the Phase 2 projects are. And that was followed by a report out on the plethora of projects that are going on using the permanent improvement bond funds that were passed in 2015. So if you drive around our district, you can see a lot of concrete and asphalt work going on at some of the schools, secure entries going in. Oh gosh, painting, the list was long, so that's why I say it was a short agenda appearance, but a lot of information shared that night. And then that was followed by our Phase 2 construction financial report that we do quarterly. And so Treasurer Gooding provided that update for us. And then we went into our, normal monthly financial report, which really for this month was the full year, fiscal year 22. So we had 12 months of data. So it was good to see that, and proud of the district for managing finances to come in under budget on expenses and just a little over on expenses, and I'm sure he will give more revenue, over on revenue. We brought in more than we had projected, and then we were under on expenses. So proud of the district for their financial management on that piece, and I'm sure Mr. Gooding will give us more later. And I think that was the end of our meeting.
You, Mrs. Mooring. I do have a legislative update. The legislature is actually on summer break, summer recess, which sounds lovely. But since we last met, I know that I let you all know by way of email, but the budget has been passed and signed by the governor, which is exciting news to be done with that process. As a reminder, we agreed that I would send a letter on our behalf to the House Speaker and to all of them, each of the members of the conference committee, urging them to continue to move forward with implementing the Fair School Funding Plan. And I will go into more detail about everything that was in the budget next month, because there is an all-day seminar on August 1st that I know I am planning to attend, and I think Dr. Deagle and Mr. Gooding, Treasurer Gooding, are also planning to attend. But just a couple bullets about the budget. So the Fair School Funding Plan was maintained with fiscal year 2022 data for base cost inputs and the integrity of the formula as it was designed, with funding that was all intact. And then additionally, the funding was provided to conduct the Fair School Funding Plan's comprehensive economically disadvantaged cost study. So that was all part of the final bill. A couple other things that I'll mention now that were in the budget bill that relate to public education. So universal vouchers were part of that budget bill, with prorated awards for families making above 450% of the federal poverty level. The budget amended the statutory or the mandatory student retention under the law known as third grade reading guarantee. I will not go into the weeds on that right now, but there are some significant changes that were made related to the third grade reading guarantee. A couple other things, the budget bill will require I was going to say ODE, but now the Department of Education and Workforce to provide reimbursements to make school breakfast and lunch free for all students who are eligible for reduced price meals. It increases the minimum new teacher base salary to $35,000. It requires, we talked about this one at our finance committee meeting, but it will require all sports gaming revenue. Oh, sorry, we didn't talk about this one. The one that we talked about was that it will require schools to accept cash at athletic and school events, with a limited exemption for events at a public facility that is leased by a professional sports team or privately owned facility. What I started to say is that it will require all sports gaming revenue to be used to support public and nonprofit public education for students K-12. That really doesn't mean anything to us. It's just the source of funds for the state as they work through that funding formula. What else? Oh, the other major impact of public education is that it restructured as I said, what was the Ohio Department of Education to be the new Department of Education and Workforce under a director who will be appointed by the governor. It removed most functions from the state superintendent and the state board of education. And just a note, I have heard that a lawsuit is planned to challenge the constitutionality of that particular provision. And I will go into more comprehensive, and I'm sure our treasurer will go into more comprehensive impacts of the budget bill after that August 1st seminar. We talked about this on Tuesday night as well. The Department of, I keep stumbling over Department of Education and Workforce, but the department has not yet released the simulations that show us exactly what the financial impact will be of moving forward with implementation of the First School Funding Plan. So none of that has been released yet. I'm not going to revisit any pieces of legislation that we've already talked about, but I am going to mention, even though they're on summer recess now, there are a few new pieces of public education related legislation that have been introduced since we last met at our regular board meeting. So I'll just go through them pretty quickly. House Bill 206 relates to the expulsion of a student from public school for actions that endanger the health and safety of other students or school employees. House Bill 211, that's a piece of legislation that would require a public body to permit members of the public to comment or testify about matters of public concern before the public body at its public meeting. I think I've said this before. We have chosen to include public participation. We always have. This bill, if it passes, it would make that mandatory. House Bill 214 is a piece of legislation that would require each public school to adopt a policy regarding expectations related to the performance of staff member professional duties. House Bill 216 would require the Department of Education and Workforce to develop a process for requesting an investigation of a school's compliance with its policy prohibiting harassment, intimidation, or bullying. House Bill 219 is related to the College Credit Plus program. House Bill 235 would make changes regarding membership and election to the State Board of Education, and it would also make changes to the State Board's public meetings. For a minute, I thought that maybe that legislation had been introduced before the changes related to the budget bill, and that it was no longer relevant, but that's not the case. It is a bill that they intend to move forward related to the composition of the State Board. And then Senate Bill 128 would require disclosure of the for-profit status of community school operators and post-secondary educational institutions. That is all. I know that was kind of a list, but that's new legislation since we last met in regular meeting. They are still on summer recess. That doesn't mean that there won't be new legislation introduced, though. So next month, look forward to a budget bill more in-depth update. I think next we have a report from Gahanna Jefferson Education Foundation from Mrs. Coates.
Thank you. There are two things that we just wanted to highlight from the foundation. So supporting Gahanna Together Day is Saturday, August 26th. And this is a day that brings together Gahanna for a day of community building. This event began as a way to connect people to each other and to strengthen small businesses during COVID. The response was so positive that they are making, it's coming back as an annual event. And the foundation is reaching out to principals for project ideas, and there will be opportunities to volunteer at Royal Manor, Jefferson Elementary, and Chapel Field. And then, Cliff, I think you shared a little bit about this, but the foundation was also talking about their Niagara bottling, or their philanthropic arm, Niagara Cares, works with the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation to fund community projects for their local employees to volunteer and engage in their respective communities. The local Niagara facility chose Gahanna for their project, and the foundation has been working with them to improve the phys ed and recreation spaces at Middle School West. Cal Ripken Senior Foundation purchases all of the materials, it's approximately $80,000, and organizes the project. And then the Niagara employees will volunteer for 2 days in October to complete the projects. And so the foundation's working with Cliff closely to coordinate the presentation of the preparation for the projects. They're going to finalize the details. They've talked about certain things, but I think once they're final, share what those projects are going to be. So very exciting. Want me to roll just right into it?
Mrs. Coates has the next update from Student Learning and Achievement. Go ahead.
So there were two articles shared this month to all student learning and achievement liaisons. And I wanted to bring them forward because I think it's good when we get validated on things our district is doing well. And so, and because we're not day-to-day operations, I thought it was a good learning for us as a board, but then Dr. Deagle, even I'll be sharing the links with you as well so you can see if it's with others. So the first article was about using adult learning principles for effective faculty onboarding. And the timing of the article is perfect because in the past couple of weeks, I just ran into two people that have been recently onboarded that praised our onboarding as a district, comparing us to other school districts as like this was just blew them out of the park. So it was just really neat to see that that was there. The article focused on phases of onboarding versus just a one-time session, so that's where I thought that might be some good learning for us to read, so look for that link. The other article was a teacher of 26 years who has experience teaching around the world and identified common themes of what teachers need from their school leaders. And so visiting classrooms at the beginning and end of the day was listed, which I know is something, Dr. Deagle, you've been doing since you started. And then also just those collaboration opportunities, which reminded me of the work that we're doing at the high school, creating those collaboration spaces and putting like subjects together, professionals together. And then they talked also about the, this teacher talked about the social and emotional support needed, which in the past year I saw a lot of that coming through for our staff in addition to our students. The other thing I wasn't sure that we were doing that I thought would be good learning is they talked about, you know, administrators can't be everywhere and that having teacher leaders at the appropriate times. And so you'll see that link and there'll be more information on that article. That is it. Thank you.
Mrs. Coates. I don't think I have any other reports, right? Okay. We're on the public participation section of the agenda. I don't have any slips. It looks like Eric doesn't have any slips either. If there was anyone that intended to address the board during public participation, I'm seeing nobody move. So we will move on to adoption of the agenda. Are there any recommended changes to tonight's agenda? Okay. Is there a motion then to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Mrs. Coates. Any discussion? Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle-Antonio?
Whoop. Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, we are on to the superintendent's report. I will turn it over to you, Dr. Deagle.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Good to be with you again this evening. And Eric, if you would just timestamp when our president said that we had too many meetings in June and put that on your calendar for next May. Thank you. I'm kidding, truly, because I do like when we get together and can share what's happening in the district. I do want to show an appreciation because it did come really in full light on Tuesday, didn't it? The work that our operations team is doing over the summer months. And I am just so incredibly appreciative for our custodians, our maintenance, our grounds, our secretaries who continue with us year round to ensure that we have properly wrapped up a year and we're preparing for 4 weeks from now. And so thank you, and please continue to pass my appreciation to your group, Cliff. Also, our communications team has been working very hard over the summer months to launch our new website. So thank you, Eric, because I believe before we meet again, you will see at least a soft launch of our new website. We're going to release it internally and see if we can break it, is what you said. Before we get it out to our community, to our public. And what I really appreciate about our communications team is they don't just drop something and move on to the next. They're constantly revising, taking feedback, making adjustments. And so I know when we have that new website out there, feedback will be welcomed and incorporated where it makes sense. I appreciated spending the 4th of July with you in the morning, walking with our tremendous marching band, and getting to meet our new Lionettes, our return of the Lionettes. So super excited. I've been in contact with their advisor coach since the 4th of July, and we will do a formal introduction at our first home football game stadium opener, first band and cheer event, which will be on September 1st. So cannot wait for that opportunity. Excited again for the return of the Lionettes. I'm honored to have been invited to 2 opportunities in the next few weeks here. One of them is speaking at Rotary next week, so I'm really looking forward to that presentation to share the good work that we're doing, and then just some things that are around the corner and where we can partner. And then I'm also excited that Tia Holloman and I will be attending a chamber conversation at the Gahanna Public Library in early August. We're going to be presenting on workforce development. What we're going to be sharing is just a little bit of what is the difference between a pre-apprenticeship, an internship, an early experience. What are the various ways our community businesses can partner with us? Because for some, it doesn't make sense to have a young person on a factory floor. It's not safe. But what could that manufacturing facility provide to our students to show them what all the engineering opportunities are? So really excited for those 2 invitations. I appreciate always the outreach of our community to bring me in, invite me in. And I also received an invitation yesterday to visit our 254 Youth Center by West Middle School. So I'll be doing that in mid-August on a Friday evening. I've been told you just sit around a fire pit and talk to students, which I'm really looking forward to. Just a few more things, because I also have some things from the assistant superintendent as well. Our alternative school is still progressing. We are partnering with Mifflin Township. The wonderful folks at Mifflin are providing and building out some space for us in that building just next to the fire department on Rocky Fork. So that should be ready around October, is the hope. Oh, I'm getting eyes like you shouldn't have said that, Deagle. Don't put that out there. Yeah, are you turning your microphone?
I know that Chief said that he was receiving quotes and bids and had
Gotcha.
sent a list of general contractors, so I think they're waiting for that process to come along. But I think if they can get it booked, then that could be a real potential for us. So.
Pretty quick build out, I think. The structure's in place, it's just getting that internal fit in. So we're excited about that. And then from my world strategic planning update, I know for Mrs. Coates and Mrs. Horn, I provided you both with an update recently, but as a reminder, we do have a third party that is facilitating our strategic plan. And the first section was the the sensing phase of the process. That has been completed through survey, individual meetings, listening sessions, and they are coding that qualitative data and collecting the quantitative data as well. They will be reporting that to our small committee here in a few weeks, and then we're going to be taking that data, our Redcon is going to be taking that data to a strategic planning team who will be working to develop our strategic plan. So I have reached out to members of our community, our staff, for both classified and certified, parents, administrators, our board members, 2 of our board members will be on there. So a wide range of individuals participating to first determine whether our mission and vision still make sense for our community. If not, what should it be? And then what will be our action steps to fulfill our obligation to our community for the next 3 to 5 years. The really wonderful There's a lot of wonderful about this, but what I'm most looking forward to is once that planning development team meets for 2 full days, there's another round of pushing out information to the community and asking for feedback. So for our community members who haven't yet lended their voice to the process, there's another opportunity to do so in September and October. So please be looking for that. And I believe I had mentioned to you before when we talked about parking, we are looking to relocate our central office to free up more parking space. Cliff and I have been working on that really over the summer months to anticipate where to go a year from now, because those of you who have been in the real estate and land market, you really need to get a start on that now. So in the coming months, we should have some news to bring to you and get your feedback on. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Deagle. Next, a report from our treasurer, Mr. Gooding.
All right, thank you. As Mrs. Mooring said, we had a great meeting on Tuesday night. We've got a little bit, and then I'll preview what's coming. When we talked about the Phase 2 report after Cliff gave his project overview, we did our quarterly update. The revenue for the project, at this point, the life to date since March of 2021, when we issued the bonds and certificates of participation, revenue is, we've received $255,466,156.08. Of that, we've received $1,801,156.08. I point that out because we had a little piece at the end of the fiscal year because we had to stop our processing early to get things closed for the board. We did have a large number of maturities that hit in June. So it was interest that was earned in June, but was booked in July. So it didn't show up on the books there, but that was $2,818,483.64, bringing the total interest earnings to date to $4,619,639.70. So I say that to preview a presentation you'll have in just a little bit after I get through my part from Mr. Ryan Nelson and Red Tree that handle the investment pieces that we work with on the construction funds. Expenses to date for the Phase 2 program, $60,768,346.02. So that was all about the construction piece. Then we went to the monthly financial report. And I guess it's always good when we say that the reports are boring, but it's the fact that it's like you said, revenue was up, the tune of 2.7%, and expenses came in under at 0.69%. We did have some things that hit on the revenue side that typically don't throughout the year. We did some transfers within the general fund, so it overstates the revenue a little bit when we talked about the transfers that we did, consolidating some accounts and the money that went into the budget reserve. So that overstated the revenue a little bit. We also had two big pieces that came in during the month. We received a catastrophic aid reimbursement we received at the end of FY23 for FY22 reimbursement. That was just under $204,000 that we received, and Medicaid reimbursement that we received just under $284,000. So those two pieces came in the month of June, which was very good. But it's a good thing that the report's boring, that it's exactly where we want to be. Revenue up, expenses down, and overall the cash, the line that Daphne likes to look at so much, is that the cash balance improved to the tune of $3.8 million. So that's a very, very positive thing for us. Mrs. Piccolantonio did mention that we will get into the deep dive into the budget in August after we sit through what they call the BAD seminar on August 1st with all the professional associations at that point. Some things on the agenda that you will have before you for approval, obviously the financial reports. Fund-to-fund advances, you'll remember at the end of June, we approved an advance from the general fund to the yearbook to account for that debt. This is just an accounting transaction for June 30th only. So now that we're into FY24, we have to return that advance back to the general fund. That's what that does. We have some appropriation adjustments in here. We have some for the 200 and 300 funds, which are student activity funds, which are district and student managed. We had some additional requests that came in that we're putting forward. And then we also have the carryover budgets for the federal grants that you see that we are now rolling over into the appropriation for 24, because what you had last month was the allocation for the grant year 24. This is the carryover of those that we're adding to it as well. We have 3 then and nows for your approval. We have June donations, which again, we always say thank you so much to our supporters for continuing to invest in our students and our programs. And the last item that you have before you is something 3 of you have not seen before, because this is something we only do every 5 years. This is extending the bank depository agreement that we have with Heartland Bank. I'm extremely impressed and thankful for the service that they do for the district, for my job, but also for, again, supporting the students in the programs. They are a big community partner with us, so we are continuing that depository agreement with them for another 5 years. And we'll get that moving, and that's all I've got for this evening, unless you have any questions.
The first page of the agreement has where we have to select one of 3 methods, and you had shared, you want to share what method is being selected?
Yes, I can talk about that. So in 2017, the State Treasurer's Office put out what was, for collateralization, the Ohio Pooled Collateralization System, OPCS. And by putting that in, we had to have, the banks had to cover 105% of our uninsured public deposits. With the implementation of that program, it reduced it to 102%. So that gives us the best security that our money, we're covered because it's greater than 100%. So this gives us the best protection that we can at this time. The others, we could negotiate something less. I wouldn't recommend doing that because then that puts our money at risk. This is the best, highest level of protection for our funds. So that's why I select that one. Yes.
Version of the contract that's uploaded, it's a clean copy, it's
Yes,
not marked.
That is what I'm
The
selecting.
version I assume that I'll sign,
That
or you
that I
sign,
will sign. Yes. has
is
that.
marked.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's just the clean copy that's in here.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay. Then we will move on to letter G. Thank you, Mr. Gooding. Financial business, there are 7 items for action. Is there a motion to approve item G7, which is approval of items G1 through G6?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Coates. Is there a second? Thanks, Mrs. Horn. Any additional discussion about any of these items? Okay, Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
I will, but I will also say that after we do this, then I'm going to have Mr. Nelson come up and give his piece.
Move too
No,
fast.
that's okay.
Sorry. Let's approve
We
and
can
then.
do this and.
Yeah, that's
I
fine.
just want-
Sorry.
That's okay. Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley? Yes. Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring? Motion carried.
So I see under your financial report, is that the presentation that we're going to have?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to welcome Ryan Nelson up to the podium, and you do not need to do anything to the microphone. It's all set. Ron, not to me, but I know it's, yeah, thanks.
I'm not about to mess this up. It is on, okay. Well, thank you. Scott, do you want to lead up to what I'm going to talk about or anything, or just want to start?
Yeah, no, I can do that. So one of the things that we've been doing, working with Ryan and Jennifer and Joe and the team at Red Tree, is we have 2 investment groups that we work with. Ryan and his team handle the construction funds, the certificates of participation. A $253 million project. It's big. And it was even a bigger challenge at the time before I got here, when we went to market, and I think we were looking at we'll call it 0%
Basically
interest
zero,
rates.
yes.
It was nothing. So I think at that point, we were hopeful to get anything in interest earnings, and I think the number we were initially looking at was maybe around, if we hit $1 million, that was going to be a great thing. Then the economy changed and rates started improving. So then we started reinvesting and doing some things like that. And I think maybe about a year ago, we looked and kind of wanted to reassess what those interest earnings would be. So at that point, we looked at it and we were estimating we were going to potentially bring in $4 million if we didn't reinvest any beyond what the current maturities were, the investments were when they matured. So that was $4 million, but what I just reported earlier is that with that in here, we're now at 4.6. So we've exceeded that, which is great because we have reinvested. Now we're going to continue to reinvest that. So what we wanted to do was give another update to the board in the community, because we've surpassed that. where are we now and where do we see ourselves going, just so that we're out there, because these are funds that we will be able to earmark in the construction fund to do things for those projects and all the wonderful things that we talked about Tuesday night. So.
Well, thank you, Scott. And yes, it's always good to give a report when it's positive, better numbers than you originally predicted. So thank you for having me here tonight. I'm Ryan Nelson. I'm with Red Tree Investment Group and here to give an update on the construction project, primarily the investment earnings and where we're going from here. Scott, do you have the clickers? Flippers? We call it the flipper in my house. I don't know what you call it at your house. There we go. Just real quick for those of you all maybe new to the meetings and new to the board, I am the co-owner of Red Tree Investment Group, and we are a firm that is focused on investing public funds, primarily Ohio schools. We work with about 220 of you all, so I do understand the nuances of investing school district funds and work on. I think we're up to right now. We have about 60 construction projects we're working on right now. So. There's a lot going on right now in this arena, but we manage a little over $8 billion here across Ohio. I've been working with the district for quite some time. We worked with you all with the Lincoln Elementary as well, and an overshot there too with the investment earnings. So let's keep up that trend going. Just real quick, as a reminder about the permitted investments, Scott was talking about the collateral. And as it relates to the depository agreement, that's part of the permitted investments. The district has an investment policy statement. It follows the Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 135-14. It is all centered around safety of principal, liquidity, and then a market rate of return. You keep that in order, and you keep all of yourselves and ourselves out of trouble. And that's what it's there for. Everything that you see on the screen there is at the disposal of the school district as they invest funds. It's there. It's plain vanilla. It's all fixed income. You don't see Google stock, you don't see Apple stock, you don't see anything like that up there. So this is all, again, centered around safety of principle.
And we should have talked about this before, but with this, that I'm required every year to go through investment training to invest any of our funds through the State Treasurer's Office, the Center for Public Investment Management, CPIM. All of these are available to everyone, but some of these, like for example, commercial paper, we have a lot of those, and going through that training doesn't allow you to invest in commercial paper. You have to go through a lot more training to do that. I've done that, so that affords us the ability to invest in commercial paper. So there's a lot of training that goes on behind the scenes to make sure that we can take advantage of all these tools.
Thank you, Scott. Just now a quick update on the construction funds, and I have it broken out into two different accounts. The larger $205 million, and then also the COPS funds, just to give you for each individual fund about where we're at. Again, these were issued in March of 2021, so just 2.5 years ago. Rates were much, much different at the time. So the school district was able to issue debt for 30 years, or whatever the term was, at a very, very low interest rate. So for the taxpayers here in Gahanna Jefferson, a wonderful opportunity. That was a great day. Well, then the next day we had to invest the funds, and interest rates were basically zero. So it was, we had a lot of work to do back in the day, and as Scott mentioned, we were hoping, fingers crossed, toes crossed, that we could get $1 million out of that. If you remember back with the Lincoln Elementary, it was around 20-some million, and we earned like almost $2 million there. So it was like, we're going to earn, $1 million off of $200 million. So it was, we had a lot of work ahead of us, and a lot has changed over time. Some funds have been spent out of this, obviously, for the construction project. And this portion of the debt proceeds is down to about $176 million. So we started out when interest rates were zero, and now we are inching our way north. And right now, the average maturity is much high. Average maturity of all the investments are low, but the yield of the portfolio now is over 3%. So just in a short 2 years, we've gone from basically zero. So that's why these numbers are getting better. As Scott mentioned, for this portfolio itself, the net income through June 30th, which I know you reported in July, is around $3.7 million. One reason why you saw that huge bunch of money in June, don't get used to that. That's not going to happen every month. It'd be great. But one reason that did happen in June is Scott mentioned commercial paper, which is a shorter-term investment option, and it only pays interest when the security matures. So we had a lot of maturities in 1 month, so that's why there was that like windfall. I mean, you want to call it, it's not a windfall, but a big number that you were posting, and and that is why that happened. It's because it's just spread out there. And going forward, and we're working closely with Scott and everybody here about what's going on with the project here and when you're going to be spending money, so that we could make an estimate about how much more you're going to make. And we're very conservative on numbers, because the last thing I ever want to do is stand up here and overpromise something. So right now, just with where the market is and where the project is that we're anticipating another $3.5 million out of this a portion of the funds. So for these portions of the funds, the $205 million, that would have you over $7 million in interest earnings through the life of the project. Don't spend it, hasn't been earned yet, but that is an anticipation of something in the back of your head as you're looking at the project as you move forward. The other portion of the funds is the COPS portfolio. It's just how the bonds were structured is why it's called COPS. And this portion of the monies was around $48 million. And there's been about $17 million of these funds that have been invested. The yield on cost of this is around 2.26, and it's just how the portfolio is structured and when things mature. So some of the lower yielding securities will be coming off soon, and we'll be able to enjoy the higher rates that we're seeing in today's markets. For these funds, through June 30th, it's earned about $770,000. And for this portion of the funds, because these funds are being spent quicker, we're not going to have that much more time to reinvest these funds. If a project would change, that's obviously going to change. But here, we're anticipating another $300,000 and some that you could potentially earn in interest. So putting this a little over $1.1 million. So all said and done, if everything goes out as planned, you're going to be pushing $9 million, $8 million, $8.5 million in interest earnings. So for a project like this, when you're only expecting $1 million, now you got this. It is certainly a very fortunate spot for the school district to be in, because I know how construction projects are. They're always overruns, constantly budget issues, and then there's always the wish list about things that you would like to have for a project. So interest earnings are certainly a great spot for those. Any questions on that? And then the next couple of slides, just for your illustrative purposes about showing like those big months that you potentially could see higher income. So as the portfolio is constructed right now, the larger portfolio is going to see, if nothing else changes, next March you would see another big number that you would be booking for interest. And the same thing, I believe, is for the other account as well. It's just because commercial paper offers such a better yield in the markets, we want to take advantage of that. But it does just push out when you receive your interest on that. So it comes down to an accounting question with that. Any questions on that? So I have down, we gave that update in December of 22. It was around $4 million. So 6 months later, look at this, the money we're making. So let's see what happens in another 6 months. So we can easily do another report to either the Finance and Facilities Committee in a few months, or the full board, whatever you all would need. So happy to help out and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nelson. Any questions from anyone? Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you
the
all.
update.
Thank you all for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks.
And I didn't move that.
Okay, so before I move into the Assistant Superintendent section, did I cut off anything else that you wanted to say, Mr. Gooding? Okay. All right, so we are on letter H. And Dr. Deagle, do you have a report from Mrs. Elliott tonight?
You know, I incorporated most of it in my report, but I would like to, before you get to the human resources consent items, welcome Mrs. Jill Beaver back to Gahanna Jefferson Public Schools. Mrs. Beaver is with us this evening for her board approval, and she returns to us from Northridge, where she has served as an elementary principal for 5 years. Before that, she was at Middle School East for 5 years as an assistant principal, a dean of students at Middle School West, and a teacher at Middle School West. She is, pending your approval, going to be the proud new principal of High Point Elementary School. So Jill, welcome back home to Gahanna. We are so happy to have you.
Eagle. We are going to do the items under letter H first. So those are educational pupil programs and services. Is there a motion to approve item number H7, which is approval of H2 through H6?
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Is there a second? Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Any discussion about those items? I thought I saw you hit your microphone, Mr. Manley. Sorry. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley? Yes. Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. We are on letter I, which is human resources, and there are 35 items for action. Is there a motion to approve I-36, which is approval of items I-1 through I-35?
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Mr. Manley. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Coates. Any additional discussion about these items? Mrs. Mooring?
I just want to thank the HR office because clearly with 35 items, they have not had a day off this summer. But it's a lot of work and a lot of details, and so we appreciate their attention to all of these things, as well as things to close out last year. So this is only part of the story, I'm thinking, but also to welcome you, Mrs. Beaver. Glad to have you back.
Go ahead,
Uh,
Mrs. Coates.
For, it was, the hiring of all this, but then that follows what I said earlier about all the onboarding too, that's being coordinated across all the different positions. So like big kudos to them.
Anybody else? I think one of the most frequently asked questions I get as a board member, or maybe not questions, but things that I think people are surprised about, is that people are still working in the summer. And my response is normally, there's actually so much work that goes on in the summer in the district. So thank you to all of our staff who works really tirelessly all year and hopefully at least gets a tiny bit of a break. Any additional discussion? Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Manley? Yes. Tried to give you a heads up there. No, it's okay. Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn? Motion carried.
Welcome home, Mrs. Beaver. Next, I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Hetzel.
Very much. And I was going to, before I get started, I was going to ask Jill to not go to High Point Elementary, but I'm afraid she's already been there. Oh, you haven't? Okay. Take your time. Okay. I'll go ahead and address a couple of items that are on tonight's agenda. First is resolving to participate in the Meta Bus Purchasing Cooperative. We typically do that. We allow them to run our bids for us. We get many options with many manufacturers, giving us the ability to then build the buses that we need for this year. So we are planning on purchasing 6 buses and a van if the pricing can work out. We do have a good fleet, but we do have some older buses that we're really trying to address to get it caught up. So this would be helpful. I'll also take that opportunity to let you know that Krista and I do plan on applying for some of the grants that are out there to see if we can qualify for replacement buses through the EPA and AEP as well. So we're working on that. There's also renewal of our warehouse spaces, and it's an extension of the existing leases that we have right now, based upon all the activities that we have going on, we just felt like it made sense to keep them in place. So they function as a traditional inventory location, but also then a staging point for all the movement that we have with our different construction projects. So I think as we're moving, Dr. Deagle and I are evaluating different options for what we want to do with central office and maintenance and things like that. Perhaps there will be an opportunity to make an adjustment when we can figure that out, that would remove one of these leases or something like that. But I think for right now, it's helpful for us to have that in place. A couple of items then, just as a general report. I did have a goal-setting meeting with Dr. Deagle that went very well, and going through the process of working with the operations team, I'll be sitting with my team and identifying kind of a joint goal with each department that we'll work on together, and then personally wanting to keep an eye on the efficiencies and logistics that we need right now to support all the projects that we have going on. And we'll refine what those goals are going to be, but it's always good to kind of slow down and think about what we want to accomplish into the upcoming year and how many people are involved in doing that and everything. So that's great. We're doing a lot of focus right now in preparations for the first home game at the stadium. I won't get into too many specifics, but Kat was here. I've been working with Kat a lot on a number of things, she and Jessica, on what kind of accommodations we could set up for the site and have it ready to go on that date. The focus right now also in the department is continuing to close out these projects and finish a lot of those small projects. I also wanted to let you know that we did close the loop on the agreement with Peace Lutheran. So we have the agreement in place. We have our insurance coverage in place. I've worked with the high school team to come up with basically a labeling system for our parking permit process that involves all these off-site locations. And we are meeting with a paving company that I've already got an estimate from on Monday to confirm the work and then get that scheduled hopefully for the end of the month or the first week in August, so we can have all that arranged. So that's kind of the focus right now in operations.
Slow and boring, right? Thank you, Mr. Hetzel. Did you have a question, Mrs. Mooring?
I just want to clarify, the item we're voting on tonight with regard to bus purchase is actually an agreement to allow you to enter into that Meta, is that right? Yeah, Meta solution for
Yes.
negotiation purchases. We're not actually.
How I see that process going is we're participating with Meta, and then the next board meeting, I'll then present to you
Right.
all the spec'd out buses and the pricing that we want. That'll go back on the agenda, but we have to kind of have a resolution with them to be able to nail it down, and then.
That's right. I just wanted
Yeah.
people to.
I didn't want to
see
put them
bus
both on the
purchase, they might
same
think
agenda. That
we're
would seem a little presumptuous.
actually placing an order. And then secondly, his reference to High Point is because we have significant work going on there. We had the addition, and then we're also retrofitting some of the old classrooms, new things. So it's in a state of confidence that it'll be ready and beautiful beyond by the first day of school.
So we've got two items for action under letter J. Is there a motion to approve item J4, which is items J2 through J3?
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Is there a second? Did you think we already did? I thought she was. Oh,
I'll second.
go ahead, Mrs. Coates. Any additional discussion about these items? Okay, Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Pickle Antonio,
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring,
Yes.
Mrs. Coates,
Yes.
Mrs. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Manley.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. We are on letter K. And there are 4 items for action under letter K. Is there a motion to approve items K1 through K4?
So moved?
Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manley. Could I just briefly talk about item number 1? And then I'll open it up if there's any additional discussion. Item number 1 is a resolution to authorize so we, I guess last year, authorized the school district to join the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Adequacy of School Funding and directed the treasurer to pay the coalition dues. That is a resolution that is that we vote on annually, so that's why we see it on the agenda again tonight. And I guess just because I think you remember that after we joined the coalition, I was asked to join the steering committee. So just as an update from that steering committee, that lawsuit is still continuing to proceed. If you remember, it is in the stage of discovery and probably will be for this entire calendar year. Any additional discussion about any of the items under letter K?
I would
Go
like
ahead,
to
Mrs.
discuss 2 and 3, the resolutions nominating Burl Brown Pickle Antonio and Daphne Maureen for the OSBA Recognition Award. So the OSBA Recognition Award honors individual board members whose fellow board members, in recognition of their dedication to good governance and participation, wish to publicly acknowledge such contributions. Any board member may motion to nominate another for the OSBA Recognition Award, and after receiving a second to that nomination, which was done this evening, a majority of the board must approve a resolution for the award to be given. Once voted upon, the Board of Education should forward the approved resolution to OSBA on behalf of the board members to be recognized. Any individual board member may request the nomination. It is incumbent upon the board members and their colleagues to determine whether his or her work on behalf of the district deserves such recognition. The OSBA has a sample resolution that's out there, but in looking at both these resolutions, both of you have had accomplishments that went beyond what that sample was, and so is now added into these 2 resolutions to demonstrate the dedication, the leadership, the service you both have done to our district, which is above and beyond. And so wanted to be able to share publicly the why behind it and why we have it on the agenda tonight.
Mrs. Coates, I don't think either one of us is really good at accepting recognition, so I was just going to move on. Is there anything else that anyone wants to say? Very much appreciated. Thank you. It's just uncomfortable.
I know.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say here to that.
Mr. Manley, we're not good. I don't think either one of us is good at that. Anything else about any of the other items? Okay, Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Mooring?
Have them all grouped together, right? Yes.
Mrs. Coates? Mrs. Horn? Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes. And I'm just going to smoothly move us into letter L. Is there a motion to go into executive session pursuant to revised code 12122G5 for the purpose of discussing matters required to be kept confidential by federal law, rules, or state statutes? Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Coates. Before we call the roll, I'm just going to explain for anybody who is here with us in the room or watching the meeting, when we go into executive session, we will stop live streaming. We will go into a separate room. We do have to come back into open public session, back into this room, but the only board action we will be taking after executive session is to adjourn the meeting. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring? Yes. Motion carried.
So it is 7:40 PM, and we will take a brief break and then go into executive session. Thank you.